It's a funny thing, reality. Some people can choose to go their entire lives ignoring it until one day they find it staring them directly in the face, asking them for another apple juice. I had never really seen myself as capable of taking care of another human being. I could hardly take care of myself. But sometimes, when I think about it, I think that Clark needed me. And in some ways, I think I needed him. Every year, according to the American Humane Association, there are nearly 3 million cases of child abuse that go reported. Unfortunately, there are still several thousand that go unreported. In the following selection, Molly, a teenager who takes up a job as a summer camp counselor, meets a troubled kid who reminds her a lot of herself. So she decides that if she can't change her past, she will do everything in her power to change his future. Presenting Ants by Clint Snyder. I remember one day I was sitting down at a table with all of the kids eating lunch, and Clark tugged at my shirt sleeve just to tell me that the ravioli tasted like dead cat. If there was one thing that I could say about kids, it would be that they're always honest. Not that I really consider myself an adult. I'm only 17. Maybe I'm just not that honest. That wasn't what told me that Clark and I had been through some of the same things, though. He was perfect. At least he wanted to be. And so did I. Therapists will tell you that in most cases of abuse, children are more likely to miss school and fail their classes. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes we're the perfect ones. I remember one day, several of the counselors and all the kids and I went on a little nature hike. It wasn't anything fantastic, mostly just fallen leaves and dead logs and stuff like that. But to a 10-year-old, it might as well have been a trip to the moon. I remember Clark kept pointing out all the rocks and the beetles. But there was one thing that he pointed out to me that stood out a little bit more than the rest. It was just an anthill, but for some reason that anthill still haunts me to this day. I remember watching as several of the kids started stepping all over the ants and kicking over the anthill. And I was watching as all of these little ants were just scurrying, running around in chaos, as these kids were ruining something that was perfect to them, that they had been working themselves to death to have. I know I was so angry for no reason. But I remember Clark coming up to me and hugging me. After a while, I got over it. I poured my water down the anthill and we started heading home. On the way back to camp, Clark tripped and banged his knee on some rocks. He kept saying that he was fine, but I could tell from the way that he was walking that something was wrong. So I sat him down and I lifted up his pant leg. Immediately I saw the fresh scrape, but under that I saw that his legs were covered in bruises. And I think the only thing that kept me from falling over in shock in that moment was the fact that I wasn't all that shocked. I knew that this was happening, but I just kept shoving it to the back of my mind because I knew that it was just another imperfection on him. He had told me about all of his medals and his good grades, and I knew that he was just like me. And we thought that if we were perfect and we could make them happy, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't hit us anymore. Clark quickly covered up the scrape with a lie, saying that he liked to roller skate, he just wasn't very good at it. Maybe kids aren't always that honest. He was a good liar, though, and so was I. We had to be in order to make sure that the world thought that we were perfectly well adjusted, to convince ourselves that the lives that we were living was perfectly normal, even though we knew it wasn't. remember that night, I had a dream. I had a nightmare. I was standing on a hill watching the sunset with Clark. And out of nowhere, this dark hooded figure comes up behind us and pulls Clark away from me. I turned around and I tried to scream, but I couldn't make a noise. I couldn't move, and I felt like my insides were rotting because there was nothing that I could do to help save this little boy as he was being beaten to death in front of me. I was helpless, and I was scared, and I had had enough. When I woke up the next morning, I called Child Protective Service and I told them what I knew. I knew that Clark would hate me for this, but it had to be done because he did not deserve to be treated like that. No one deserves to be treated like that. So I called Clark to my cabin so that I could tell him what I had done. I knew that he would be so angry, but when I told him, he didn't get mad. He just smiled at me through tears. But this smile was not the same fake smile that we had been wearing our entire lives, just to let people think that we were okay. This was a real smile, a smile of relief. And through his tears, he looked at me and he said, "Thank you." After a while, I asked him if he wanted a brownie, and him being a 10-year-old boy, he said yes. So I walked over to the cupboard, I got down 2 brownies, and we were eating when he looked over at the floor, and he saw a single ant. Strong and independent. And I watched as he walked over to the ant, and he gave him a little crumb. And he said, "You're gonna be all right, little buddy." And for just a moment, I thought, yeah, we're gonna be all right.